Bonjour, I'm Matei, and welcome to another podcast episode powered by ProdCamp, your trusted platform for managing user feedback and turning it into impactful product decisions. In today's episode, we'll talk about how to distinguish between what customers want and what they truly need. Vast question. To guide us through this conversation, we're joined by the brilliant Beks Yelland. Beks is currently a fractional chief product officer at Cindy Health. She's also the founder of the Female Product Led and an advocate for mental health and psychological safety in product teams as the co-organizer of the Product Mind community. Her experience spans industry like Climatech and SaaS, where she's helped companies make strategic product decisions that truly align with customer needs. And in today's episode with Beks, we'll explore how to prevent solutionizing, the importance of discovery before qualification, and the challenges of maintaining visibility and accuracy throughout the product process. Beks will also share her views on what bad and good product discovery looks like, and more importantly, how to achieve success in day-to-day product development. So let's get started, Beks. Did I miss anything important?
Not at all. You did say how to not do solutionizing, which isn't entirely what we are going to cover. It's going to be more how to do it in the right way with the right people in the room at the right time.
Love it, Beks. Thank you for that.
That's okay.
So you work, Beks, with product teams across so many industries. How do you figure out what customers really need versus what they say they want? And maybe for the less senior folks out there, why is this even important?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting one. And I've been involved in lots of transformations with organizations who brought me in to say, let us, we want to become more product-led. And we are at the moment very sales-led. I worked years ago with a team who didn't really even have a sales organization as such. They had an account management organization that just asked customers what they wanted all the time in order to keep them happy, in order to keep them renewing, as opposed to talking to them about what we wanted to build or what we were building. It all comes down to the question that the commercial team are asking the customer. And they often ask, what do you want? Because they want to facilitate a conversation. They want that conversation to continue, and they want to be seen as being flexible and amenable and useful and helpful. And the problem that you get when a salesperson says to a customer, what do you want? The customer doesn't really think about what they need. They just talk about the features that they want or the thing that's in front of them today that is annoying them. There's recency bias in the way that customers answer that question. It can be catastrophic. And so what I tend to do, and what good product leaders would tend to do, is to actually challenge. So the question you should be asking a customer is, what is the problem you're trying to solve? Get them to go back to first principles. What's the challenge that you have? Where are you trying to get to? What's the outcome you're trying to achieve? And so if you get them to work backwards from that end goal, what does good look like when that problem's solved? What does good look like when you've achieved that outcome? You can then tell them how your current product offering or your current product roadmap is going to be able to help them solve that problem. And so when you don't do that, what happens, and this is part of your question, what you end up having is a conversation between commercial and customer where they start to solutionize together. And so many people I've worked with have had that challenge where a bunch of features comes from the sales or commercial org, is fed back into the product org, and the product org are then just dealing with that and trying to triage that and fit that into their existing roadmap. And it might not be the right thing to build in order to help that customer achieve their problem, because they haven't been pushed back on, they haven't been challenged to really think about what it is that they're trying to do.
That's very interesting. So what you're saying is that kind of good discovery looks like going back to the problem, to the first principle of the problem, and on the other hand, to put ourselves in the world where the problem will be solved and how it's going to look like, what would be the impact on the customer. But can we get back maybe to, what a bad discovery could look like? Like you said a word about it, like the sales team basically ask what the customer wants, and is there any other usual suspect when it comes to inaccuracy in the product discovery process?
Well, yeah, I touched briefly on recency bias. And so if the conversation isn't framed in the right way, then what will happen is the latest problem or the latest challenge that the customers had will be the one that they will bring to the table. Because you always need to think about what's their agenda, what's their current situation, who do they report into, what are they trying to achieve today, tomorrow, this week, this month, what are their quarterly targets they're trying to get to. And you might find that if you are more bold in the way that you orchestrate that conversation, you're more likely to get to the crux of what they're trying to achieve mid to long term, rather than problem solving tactically the latest thing that's been a problem for them. And that's the problem with that open-ended question, going back to the what do you want question, what do you need question, as opposed to saying to a customer, this is what we're doing, this is why we're doing it. Let's talk about what you're trying to achieve as an overall outcome, or what your big problems are that you need solving. What is your problem today?
Love that, and especially since most of the sales team are trained on open-ended questions, but not necessarily on what open-ended questions always to ask. So I love that you're pointing out that not all open-ended questions are good. It's not because it's open-ended that it means it's a good sales question. You maybe have also a story about that specific file about the recency bias, but I have one quick one that I can share. We were actually a few weeks ago talking with one of our customers at ProdCamp that was exactly saying, well, Monday product meeting, product team, engineering team gathering all together, the usual thing, and all the engineering team start telling about these two big fix they need absolutely to do, because those 5-6 customers in the past 2 weeks that pointed out this big issue, and we need to kind of revise our priorities to fix that as soon as possible. And our customer and the account holder, who is the CEO of the company and holds the hat of the product guy, was saying, okay, hold on a minute, like let's go to ProdCamp. Let's see, how many people requested this fix and what it can represent in terms of, revenue influence or impacted somehow by this fix. And what they figured is that this was exactly requested by 6 people among the 20,000 users they had. And it was reflecting about 15,000 monthly recurring revenue once they have, hundreds of thousands of recurring revenue. So the question ended up there, the debate ended up there as soon as everyone saw that and had a clear perspective on what was the real impact of this versus, the 5-6 features, which was actually the priority and which reflected about 20 million in annual recurring revenue. But I'm sure that we all share stories like that where there's big debate just about some recent things, while the focus should not be there for her.
Absolutely. Just to re-emphasize the crux of the problem that ensues with a commercial team who ultimately what happens, right, and we've all seen this, is if their only goal is to keep the customer happy, and if by the nature of that they then make promises on a bunch of features that they're going to get into the roadmap, then what happens is they're constantly fighting with product and technology, because they're shoving a bunch of features in, not thinking about whether they're going to be beneficial to other customers or to their colleagues for that matter, because then they're fighting for airtime from product and tech, against their colleagues, saying that my feature is more important than someone else's feature that has also been submitted into the triage process. And so there's this constant fight between the two organizations within the company. And it's not, there's the level of synergy is almost, there's none, because they're not, these two sort of entities within the company are not working together as one team. And what can happen if you make sure that the conversation that's happening between the commercial team and the customer is thinking more around how do we sell what we've currently got? How do we get a customer to buy into our current set of features or our current roadmap? How does that then allow me to be having a much better conversation with my customer? Because everything's going to already be there, or it's going to be delivered soon. And so what I try to talk about when we're working together between product and commercial to create a sales narrative is to say, what are the things that are the sales drivers versus the sales enablers? So the things that are going to enable a sale now are the things that are either existing or the things that are in your sort of now bucket, your imminent delivery pipeline. The things that could help to enable sales by offering the dangled carrot of the future. Those are the next and the later. Those are the things that really can help you to drive sales, but that they're just going to enable them as opposed to bring them in the door today. And so working together as one team means that whole discovery process with the customer can be much more in line with current plans, current thinking within product and tech. And it's not the output of that discovery conversation with each customer isn't then a fight back with product and tech every time. And no one likes that. Like the sales guys don't like that. Product and tech don't like that. And ultimately the customer will like it because they'll never get a good message back. Oh yeah, that thing that I told you could have in 3 months, we're not going to get to it until next year.
Right. So that would be how you bridge a gap and brings this team closer, like giving them the sense of what's enablement, and that's the recipe, to kind of bridge the gap.
Yes, exactly. And having the conversation as well. So the only way that the sales guys can have that conversation in an effective way is if the product team are working with them on a regular basis in order for them to have the latest information. So either the product team lean in and they're part of those sales conversations in some kind of, sales enablement function, which can work certainly in smaller orgs. I've seen that work very well. Or the product feed and they create artifacts that are pushed into the sales enablement team if that exists, if there is that part of the org. But ultimately that you're bringing the conversations together on a fairly regular basis. What I've done to some success several times is also create product champions. So that's a role that a salesperson can have. And so they're either a generalist in the product champion role or a specific domain. And they are responsible for having the conversations with products on a regular basis, bringing the themes from the customers. So not just their conversations, but everybody within their either geographical placement, if it's a global team, or a domain placement, if it's not, and bringing those themes back into the product team. At the same notion, the product team then responsible for saying, look, these are the latest things that we're building. This is the thinking that we've had since our last conversation when you brought some themes to us and we went back to the drawing board and really ideated over those struggles and those themes that were coming from the conversations you had. And so there's a return path. There's a back and forth between those two teams, making sure that those conversations are always lifted up to the broader themes. And so the bigger problems are being tackled and discussed, not the minutiae details, not the niggly little features that ultimately just creates noise for everybody. You can't monetize tiny little features in the way that you can monetize big, chunky, problem-solving, releases.
True. So it's interesting, and I like the product champion concept. The only question I have is, well, having one product champion is better than none, for sure. But by making it just one person, can't it just create bottlenecks sometimes? Or are you also maybe working with this product champion to kind of help the business team steer the conversation back to discovery in the right way and also
Yeah.
don't go straight into solution mode? Is that how you leverage this product champion?
The way that it's worked is that we're getting into very detailed sort of stuff here, but that they would be seen to be the conduit between the two organizations. So they're going to always be somebody who's a great communicator, someone who's passionate and has a great level of understanding of some of the technical constraints or limitations that the product and tech team might have. So you're always going to bring people into that role that are already, a bit of an evangelist for your product anyway. You wouldn't try and shoehorn someone into that role that doesn't quite get it, because then, it's going to be hard to handle. And so they end up being that conduit, that person that is easier for the rest of their sales org, their unit. So either it's a team or, like I said, if your sales org is split geographically or from by domain, they represent. So you might have several people within the entire sales team that are a product champion, but they represent a group of salespeople, and they're doing a bit of triaging themselves. They're reaching out to their team, going, "What are the themes that you're seeing? What are the things that are bubbling up in your area?" And sometimes it might be geographically that certain problems come from different geographical areas, rather than having that over and over and over again, and it's creating more and more noise. That you're getting the sales team to triage and theme those things up for you. And it makes it easier for the product team to consume everything at a higher level, and that's where I've seen it work quite well.
That's really really interesting. Thank you for going a bit into more detail for
Okay, I'm glad
one.
you find it interesting. Maybe we should create more product champions in sales orgs.
Right, and this is one of the things we're trying to do at ProdCamp. We're trying to have everyone be some sort of product champion to some extent, but I like the approach of empowering really one person in the team, and also, having this human triage at the start. What we've seen in the, industry and in user feedback management overall is like and with AI, obviously, that a lot of solution out there, tools or teams are leaving that to AI nowadays. And I still think that there is a lot of sense in having a human interaction early in the process to make sure that what gets in the pipe of analyzing and processing this feedback is actually relevant to your vision, your strategy, and whatever you have in mind regarding your product, instead of just dropping features like NIDs into a ever-growing backlog. When we prepped for this interview, you mentioned that discovery should come before qualification. And I found this one really interesting as a salesperson. Maybe could you walk us through why that is and how it helps get a clearer picture on customer need?
For me, I don't want to cut ideation off from the customer, because the best feature sets, the best iterations or evolutions of your product could and should and often come from your customer. And so whilst I'm always an advocate of saying to a customer, what's your problem? What are you trying to achieve? Here's our product roadmap. This is how it fits all of that. Qualification done, tick. We have a match. Discovery before all of that happens is a great way to understand what could the future of our product look like based on what we think the future for the customer might look like. Where they're going, where they're heading, where are they innovating? Where are they seeing, the options for them? Where's their crossroads coming up? Which direction might they go in? What's going to influence them in terms of making that decision? It could be anything. But allowing that conversation to happen, allowing that ideation to have some space, some airtime for it before we go into sort of hard, get the bants done or whatever, your sort of qualification framework might be. That really is important, because it's going to get coloured. That ideation, that space for discussion and discovery will get coloured once you get into the hard line of qualification. And as a product person, I want to advocate for that. I want to be able to have those conversations with customers. I want me and my team to be in those conversations wherever possible.
Right. Following this question, because we were also talking about it a bit earlier, we've both seen sales team and customers love jumping straight to solution. And we said it, they should not. But in your experience, and we've seen how we can switch the focus to the problem space. But in your experience, can business teams and maybe even customers still play a role in the solution space? For example, I don't know, by upvoting features they're interested in. What's your take on that? What are the pros and cons of that approach in your experience?
Absolutely. When I talk about being product-led, I'm not saying it's product-led by the product team and the product team are the ones that are doing the leading. I'm saying that the product's doing the leading. And so if the product's doing the leading, it means that the sales team understand the product, understand the future of the product. And if they understand the current state and the future state of the product or the product suite, it means that they have every right to sit down with the customer and to solutionize. However, as we've said, if they do that regardless of what we've currently got and think that the only way they're going to land a customer is promise a load of things that we don't have, and if a sale is achieved based on hot air and promises, nobody is happy. And I've genuinely been in situations that I'm sure you and many of your listeners might have also been in, where every sale is made on promises of things that don't exist. And what then happens is that the future state of the product is in peril. The architecture that you are creating, the technical limitations that are then created by constantly doing a bit of this and a bit of that and not having any design around how you grow and evolve the aspects of your platform. And your architecture becomes a monolith, and then it becomes hard to maintain. There are more problems. You end up as a product person being told you can't possibly fix that thing over there, because if you lift the hood on that, then something over there is going to break. That's how that happens, because it's constant, like some pieces, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And so if that understanding is really there with the sales org and they get that, they get the risk of just going in and selling feature by feature by feature. If they truly understand that, you're going to have them on side and they should just be left to fly. Do not clip their wings. Let them go for it. Solutionize to the nth degree, only if they really get those limitations and the consequences of the conversations that they have and the promises that they might make.
Love it. Thanks for demonstrating why understanding the current state of future state is definitely crucial to have the sales team take part in the solution space as well. We often talk for bridging the gap and reducing disconnect about transparency, and I was wondering, how do you balance transparency with roadmaps, whether they are shared with customers or shared with internal teams, how and make sure how do we make sure customer facing teams are staying in the loop basically, and having the right information without compromising the product vision and folding into too much into the solution space?
It's tricky, and many people will have a roadmap that's it might be a now, next, later, an ice, water, steam, it's been around for decades, that
right.
doesn't put dates on it and will have a bunch of features in blocks of notional time that might be delivered at some point. And the problem with those types of roadmaps, in my opinion, is that everyone gets frustrated because they're sort of promises, but they're not really. And no one really understands what it means because it's really vague and it's very unspecific. I'm more of a fan of having an outcomes roadmap. And with an outcomes roadmap, you can be really clear and you can get specific, because if you don't talk about the feature that you're going to deliver, the block of code that's going to do a certain thing, but you talk about the outcome that the customer will be able to achieve once this thing, this iteration, this version is released, then how that outcome is achieved is absolutely going to evolve over time. So the MVP version of how that outcome is going to be achieved, that problem is going to be solved for a customer, 0.01. That MVP version of it, you can make a commitment to and say, we're absolutely going to, have a time-bound piece of activity that's going to happen within the product and tech team. So there's the transparency, but you're changing the story of the roadmap to be outcomes, not blocks of code. And for me, that works well. If you try to be transparent and try to be pure, directive in those deliveries, and it's about blocks of code and version 1, version 2, version 3, I've never seen that work well, because things never go the way you think. You get an estimate from the dev team, you add 10% to it, then your boss, someone in my team would say it's going to be 10x times more. I'll say, I'll add another 10% on top. Then before you know it, got a really basic delivery that's going to take 6 months, which is just nonsense. And that's why that protection happens, because everyone gets uncomfortable. No one wants to be beholden to a deadline that's been, curated from a nonsense outcome. We have to deliver it by January. Why? Because someone said that was a good idea. Never have a big delivery in January. You're like, well, that's just nonsense. You're Christmas and New Year. Why would you do that to yourself?
And on time has never been the best measurement for quality, right?
Yes, very true.
Right. So what you said basically right now is don't make people vote on features, but on outcome, basically, if you want, to balance this
you could,
roadmap of transparency.
Because then you're measuring the success that's important. And then you're constantly resetting the narrative. And this is what I'm saying, everything should be about the outcome.
Love it. And
have you heard of jobs to be done?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah? It's a prioritization framework, right?
Yeah, to an extent, yes. So this all came about, its origination was with a guy called Tony Orwick, who's got a consultancy. He's well known. So Tony Orwick was the originator of the overall framework, but the jobs to be done nomenclature that people know and love was popularized by a guy called Clay Christensen back in the late 80s, early 90s, decades ago, way before I was working and had graduated. And how he did it is he had a problem to solve. He went into McDonald's and they had identified that there was a rush on milkshakes in the morning. And they couldn't quite identify what was causing that. And so he went in and he actually asked the people in the queue, why are you buying a milkshake, rather than something else? What's going on? And he realized that the job to be done for the people that were, buying a milkshake was they were just plugging a gap. That, in these branches of McDonald's over in the States, lots of people were driving to work, and the milkshake for McDonald's was easy for them to drink while they were driving, would be really filling for them. It would mean they wouldn't have to get a snack, at 11 o'clock, a couple of hours after they'd started. And so that was why they were literally going in, buying a milkshake, and off they went. And so what they surmised from that is that they needed to make the process of buying a milkshake much quicker for those people. And so they created a separate queue. And so if you were buying a milkshake and nothing else, you could just get in a separate queue, probably from the early hours of the morning. They could go in, get out super quick, get back in their car, carry on with their commute. And I can't remember the details. No one cares anymore. But sales went up because they facilitated that outcome for the customer. They just wanted to get in, get out quickly. But it's all about the outcome. It's the need, the underlying need that they're trying to achieve. And so what I don't really understand, but so many of us in our day job forget about that, because you get caught up in the conversation. You forget that you just need to be more puristic about it. What is the actual job to be done? And it works in product as well. I launched a reimagining of a mobile app back when I was at Reuters years ago. And before we relaunched the app, it was seen as this companion app to the desktop. So Reuters at the time had this product called Icon, which was the competitor to the Bloomberg terminal. So I don't know if you can imagine traders, investors, wealth managers sitting there in the trading floor with their banks and banks of monitors. Monitor off was the name of the game. All these people had I don't know, 7 or 8 monitors on a desk. It was crazy. How they could look at all of that at once, I don't know. But the mobile app, I think this was back in, well, I don't even know when it was, like, the sort of early noughties around then, maybe, I don't know, 2010, something like that. I can't remember. Anyway, the point is, the phones were smaller. It must have been later than 2010 because of the iPhone. And they were much, much smaller. So we had iPhones, Windows phones, Blackberries. People were using these tiny, tiny, itty bitty, tiny little screens, and they were trying to see all of that content on a tiny phone. And so I said, no, we need to understand at the point in time when a customer steps away from their desk and is using their phone instead, what is it that they're doing? What's the thing that they need? And it's not like checking this rate, checking this price, checking X, Y, and Z. The actual job we discovered that they're trying to do is to discover, is everything okay still? Can I carry on what I'm doing? Can I carry on drinking my pint, having my fag, playing the game of golf I'm playing? Is everything okay? Is, all is well? Yes. If all is well, I can carry on. If it's not, I have to run back to my desk. Because they weren't going to try and fix it on the phone. They were going to go back to their desk. And that was it. And so what we did in our dashboard was create a level of customization that allowed them to be able to curate that answer and get to that answer as quickly as possible. What ticker did they need? What data did they need? Etc. And we saw like 20x uplift in, the app usage when we launched that.
Oh, wow.
But you understand the difference between, like, the job to be done wasn't find this data. The job to be done was find the data so that I know outcome, everything's okay. Right back to first principles.
And it was certainly not just to build an app. That's for sure.
No, back to the product team, no.
Yeah. Love it. Love it. Thank you. Thank you so much. And for these stories, we have the same thing. Beks, I'm in France, and bread, boulangeries are very important for us, baguettes in particular. And so I think it was 15 years ago or something like that. Suddenly, boulangerie understood that what people want is buy the baguette and go out very quickly, just 2 minutes in, 2 minutes out. And they've done the same exact thing. They create a specific queue just for baguettes, and for all the rest of the product, you could wait and all. And that's also lifted up their growth and revenue. So I think that there are a couple of industry that this trick and approach could be relevant to. Thank you.
Yeah.
Really. Thanks for tuning in this episode of Prodcamp Podcast. Again, a big thank you, Beks, for sharing your insight and on how to truly understand and meet customer needs where they are. Remember, this podcast is powered by Prodcamp, the platform that helps turn user feedback into impactful product decision. Until next time, keep discovering and building for outcomes. Thank you, Beks.
Thank you.